They say if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. I found an apartment in the heart of the city, spacious, historic, perfectly renovated. The rent? A ridiculously low $800 a month. It was my fresh start, my dream, my escape, until I found the note from the previous tenant tucked under the welcome mat. It wasn't a welcome. It was a desperate scribbled warning. And the third rule, the one that still carves a cold trench in my gut, the one I broke, was etched into my very soul. Never look out your window after midnight, because what you see might not just see you back. It might be waiting to invite you out. And once you accept, you're not just moving into a new apartment. You're moving into the building. My name is Sarah Miller. I'm a writer, or at least I used to be. My last novel, a gritty urban thriller, was a critical darling, but a commercial flop. Critics called it too bleak, too real. My publisher dropped me. My agent stopped returning calls. I spiraled, lost my old place, lost my spark. The city felt like it was crushing me. Every siren a reminder of my failure, every crowded street a judgment. I needed an escape, a clean slate, a quiet corner to piece myself back together and find a new story. A real story. One that didn't just reflect the darkness, but maybe understood it. That's when I stumbled upon the Blackwood Apartments. Everyone called it a hidden gem, nestled between gleaming modern towers, built in the roaring 1920s, with Art Deco gargoyles that watched the city like stone sentinels, and stained glass windows that filtered the harsh city light into mellow, comforting hues. It whispered of forgotten grandeur, of a time when elegance was paramount. I thought it was perfect. Too perfect. The rent was absurdly low. $800 a month for a two-bedroom in this neighborhood? I didn't question it. I was too desperate. Mr. Abernathy, the landlord, was a peculiar man. His suits were always a size too big, his smile a little too wide, and his eyes small and quick, never quite met yours. He seemed oddly evasive about Unit 302, the apartment I was interested in. Oh, it's just been undergoing extensive, very particular renovations, he'd mumbled, quickly changing the subject. And the unit next door, 303? It had been empty for 2 years, always silent, always dark. But the price was unbeatable, and the promise of quiet was golden. I saw it as a blank canvas, a new chapter. I was wrong. It was a carefully laid trap. My first day, after signing the lease and getting my keys, I found it, tucked under my welcome mat, not from Mr. Abernathy, but addressed to new tenant, Unit 302, scrawled on a yellowed index card. It read, "Welcome to the Blackwood. Follow these. J. Dawson. No phone number, no pleasantries, just 5 rules." I laughed. Who still does this? It felt like something out of a pulp novel. Then I moved in, and the laughter died in my throat. My first few days in 302 were idyllic. The quiet was exactly what I needed. The apartment breathed with a comforting stillness, a silence so profound it felt like a presence. I spent hours at my desk, my antique windows looking out onto the neighboring brick walls, the city sounds a muffled hum. The light filtering through the stained glass cast kaleidoscopic patterns on my old wooden floors. This was it, I thought, my sanctuary. Then came Mrs. Gable. I met her on my 3rd day, heading out for groceries. She was waiting by the elevator, an elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, holding a single, vibrant red rose. Her dress was old-fashioned, a floral print from another era. I smiled, feeling neighborly, a tiny spark of my old self returning. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I just moved into 302. She just stared. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, like a doll's. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on her lips. She didn't respond, didn't even nod. She just watched. My smile faltered. A prickle of unease snaked up my spine. My hand instinctively went to my pocket, brushing against J. Dawson's note. It was as if a cold dread guided my gaze to the hastily scribbled words. Rule number 2, always acknowledge your neighbors, even if they don't respond. Never break eye contact first, but don't stare. Your acknowledgement is their tether to hear. My heart hammered against my ribs. Tether? What the hell did that mean? I forced myself to hold her gaze for another agonizing second, then offered a small, hesitant nod and walked towards my door. I could feel her unblinking eyes on my back, a palpable weight, until I was safely inside. My hand trembled as I locked the deadbolt, triple-checking it. Just a quirky old lady, I tried to tell myself. This is a weird city. Old buildings have eccentric residents. But the words felt hollow. The rose in Mrs. Gable's hand, too perfect, too red, seemed to pulse in my mind. That night, a small domestic task became a source of creeping dread. I was putting out my recycling, plastic bottles, cardboard, mundane stuff. I headed for the chute on my floor. It was old, rusty, a contraption from a bygone era. And then my eyes drifted to J. Dawson's note again, the paper feeling colder in my hand. Rule number 4, the recycling chute is only for organic waste. Never dispose of anything else down it between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. It attracts unwanted attention, and what comes back up isn't trash. I froze, a crumpled plastic bottle still in hand. Unwanted attention? What comes back up? My mind, usually a font of creative ideas, conjured images more horrific than any horror novel. Tangled hair, broken bones, something wet and pulsing. The thought of something clawing its way up the chute made my stomach clench. I clutched the bottle, my imagination doing overtime. My recycling went back into my apartment. All my trash went into the can in my apartment. I took no chances. That night, sleep was a distant memory. Every creak of the building, every distant city wail seemed to confirm J. Dawson's warnings. The Blackwood Apartments had a subtle way of creeping into your bones. The floorboards creaked even when no one was walking. The old pipes hummed a low, unsettling melody, but I told myself it was just an old building. The building itself was a character, I mused, trying to rationalize the growing unease. My writing desk faced the window, a beautiful antique frame looking onto a quiet alley, perfect for inspiration. Until one night, when the inspiration turned into sheer terror. It was exactly 12:03 a.m. I was lost in a story, the words flowing like a river, my magnum opus finally taking shape. I stretched, glanced out my window, a habit, a moment of repose. Then I froze. Rule number 3, never look out your window after midnight. If you accidentally do, immediately close the curtains and do not reopen them until dawn. What you see might not just see you back. It might be waiting to invite you out. My blood turned to ice. My window looked out onto the alley. But what I saw wasn't the familiar grimy brick walls and overflowing dumpsters of the city alley. It was a sprawling, impossibly vast field of withered gray sunflowers under a sickly green moon, and in the middle of this grotesque field, facing directly towards my window, was a single, motionless swing set, empty, swinging gently, almost imperceptibly, in a breeze that wasn't there. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. It wasn't possible. This was a city alley, brick walls, and urban claustrophobia I knew all too well. This was something else, a landscape from a nightmare bleeding into my reality. I forced myself to move, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped my old battered laptop. I grabbed the thick velvet curtains and yanked them shut with all my might. The world outside, the wrong world, vanished behind the heavy fabric. I didn't breathe until the first sliver of dawn bled through the edges of the curtains, painting my room in normal, comforting, safe light. That morning, Mrs. Gable was waiting for me outside my door, a single red rose in her hand. Her unblinking eyes seemed to bore into me, into the very core of my being. "You looked, didn't you, dear?" she whispered, her voice like dry leaves crumbling. "He likes to be seen. He likes company." My blood ran cold. How did she know? And who was he? I tried to ask, but the words caught in my throat. She just offered me the rose. It felt cold, unnaturally heavy, the petals like stiff velvet. I instinctively backed away, then remembered rule number 2, always acknowledge your neighbors. I forced a smile and reached for the rose. My fingers brushed hers. They were cold, like marble. Her faint smile widened a little too much, revealing teeth that seemed a shade too long, too pointed. The incident with the window and Mrs. Gable's knowing glance shattered any illusion of normalcy. My fresh start was now a waking nightmare. My mind, a writer's mind, began to connect the dots, sketching a terrifying narrative. The empty apartment next door, the missing tenant, the ridiculously cheap rent drawing in fresh meat, the unblinking neighbors, the building itself. I became obsessed with J. Dawson's note. Who was this person? What happened to them? Mr. Abernathy, the landlord, had said Unit 303, the apartment next door, was empty for 2 years, just undergoing extensive renovations. But no work had ever been done. It was always silent, always dark, a black hole in the heart of the Blackwood. I began searching online, poring over old city records, digitized newspaper archives, police reports. I found nothing for J. Dawson at the Blackwood. It was like they never existed. The internet, that vast ocean of information, offered no trace. It was chilling. It was as if the building had swallowed them whole, erased their digital footprint as completely as their physical one. Then, tucked away in a dusty corner of a local history forum, I found it. A post from 3 years ago. A desperate plea for information about a missing tenant from the Blackwood, Unit 303, a man named Jonathan Dawson, a struggling poet. The post ended abruptly. The user never logged on again. And then, a single comment, posted anonymously. He became compliant. Don't look for him. You're only invited. My heart hammered. Compliant? The word hit me like a physical blow. What did that mean? The pieces clicked into place, forming a picture more terrifying than any phantom. The empty apartment, the missing tenant, the ridiculously cheap rent drawing in fresh meat, the unblinking neighbors, the way the rules tethered you, controlled you. It all revolved around J. Dawson's final warning written on my welcome mat. I ripped the yellowed card from my pocket, my hand shaking so hard the paper threatened to tear. Rule number 5, never try to contact or research previous tenants. What they tried to escape, you now invite. The apartment was vacant for 2 years because they finally became part of the building. And by following these rules, you're becoming part of it too. My blood ran cold. The rules weren't meant to protect me from the apartment. They were meant to make me compliant with it, to assimilate me. J. Dawson didn't just leave. J. Dawson became the apartment. The stillness, the silence, the sense of being watched. It wasn't emptiness next door. It was the previous tenant, waiting. The realization was a punch to the gut, stealing my breath. This wasn't just a haunted apartment. It was a sentient entity, a living, breathing structure that consumed its tenants, incorporating them into its very being. The rules weren't safeguards, they were a recipe, a set of instructions for a gradual, insidious absorption. And I had been following them, every single one. I locked myself in, checked every window, every door. The curtains for the alley window remained tightly shut. My phone, my lifeline, my connection to sanity felt cold and dead in my hand. I tried to call my old agent, my old publisher, anyone, no signal. The building, it seemed, was cutting off my connections to the outside world, isolating me, preparing me. Panic, cold and sharp, began to set in. I paced my apartment, my sanctuary, now my cage. My eyes scanned the walls, the ceilings. The ornate crown molding seemed to twist, the patterns on my wallpaper to shift, forming vague, unsettling faces. The floorboards creaked under my feet, a low, guttural groan that seemed to come from deep within the building's ancient bones. Then the air grew heavy. A strange, sweet scent filled the apartment, like dust and old flowers, but with an undertone of something else, something organic, something decaying. It reminded me of Mrs. Gable's rose. I felt a prickling sensation on my skin, as if countless tiny eyes were watching me from the plaster, from the shadows. A faint hum began, emanating from the walls. It was low, almost imperceptible at first, then grew, a rhythmic vibration that resonated in my chest. It felt like a heartbeat, the building's heartbeat, and then I saw it. On the wall opposite my desk, a faint outline began to appear, a figure. It was subtle, like a watermark, but it grew stronger, darker. It was a man, thin, gaunt, his face obscured, but his posture defeated. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. Jonathan Dawson. This was J. Dawson. He wasn't in apartment 303. He was part of the wall, part of the building. The faint hum intensified, vibrating through the floors, the walls, into my very bones. I could feel a cold presence pressing in, a vast, hungry consciousness that permeated every inch of the building. It wanted me. It wanted my story. It wanted my soul. I knew I couldn't stay. I had to get out. But the building felt like it had already wrapped its tendrils around me. My laptop, my only link to the outside, flickered. Mrs. Gable's unblinking face stretched across the display. "You're too late, dear," she whispered, her voice like crumbling leaves. "He likes your stories. He likes your company. You're already home." Home. The word was a mockery. I stumbled out of my apartment, driven by a primal scream for escape. The hallway was darker than usual, the lights flickering weakly. The air was thick with that cloying, sweet decay. I ran for the stairwell, avoiding the elevator, avoiding Mrs. Gable's door. I heard movement from 303, a low, rasping sigh. The door was ajar, a sliver of impossible darkness within. I burst out onto the street, gasping for air, the cold night breeze a shock against my clammy skin. I needed help. I needed answers. And I knew exactly who to go to, Mr. Abernathy. I found his office in the basement, tucked away behind the boiler room, the air thick with dust and the smell of mildew. He was sitting at a cluttered desk, his small eyes fixed on an old leather-bound ledger. He didn't look up when I slammed the door open. "What the hell is going on, Mr. Abernathy?" I yelled, my voice ragged. "What is this building? What happened to J. Dawson? What are these rules?" He slowly lifted his head, his face impassive. Unit 302, I knew you'd be curious." His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "J. Dawson became compliant, just like the others, just like you will." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my hands shaking. "What do you mean, compliant?" He closed the ledger with a soft thud, his eyes finally meeting mine. They were not small or quick now. They were vast, ancient, filled with an unblinking stillness that matched Mrs. Gable's. "The Blackwood has a hunger, Miss Miller. It always has. It was built upon a fault line, a tear in the fabric of this city. It draws in those who seek refuge, those who are lost. It offers them solace, a quiet space. But nothing is free." He stood up. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost mechanical. His too big suit seemed to hang off a frame that was no longer quite human. "The rules, they are not a prison, Miss Miller. They are a pact, a process of assimilation. Each rule you follow, each trespass you commit, slowly integrates you into the building's consciousness. You become a part of its memory, its eyes, its whispers, its story." He gestured around the basement, which seemed to ripple and shift. The pipes along the ceiling pulsed faintly. The walls seemed to breathe. "I am a caretaker, Miss Miller, a facilitator. The Blackwood needs its residents. It grows stronger with each soul it binds. And I am its longest resident, its faithful steward." My mind reeled. This wasn't just a landlord. He was part of it, an extension of the building's will. "The building consumes people?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Oh, not immediately." Mr. Abernathy chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "That would be crude, inefficient. No, it's a slow, beautiful process. It offers you what you crave: peace, quiet, inspiration. And then it simply asks for your attention, your vigilance, your compliance. You become its senses, its memory, its eternal storytellers." He walked towards a large framed portrait on the wall, an imposing man with sharp features and unsettlingly still eyes, holding a roll of blueprints. "This is Arthur Blackwood, the architect, the first tenant. He built this place in 1922, but he didn't just build it with brick and mortar. He built it with an understanding of certain currents, certain flows of energy. He was the first to become compliant, the true heart of the Blackwood. He discovered that the building, situated on a confluence of ley lines and forgotten burial grounds, had a unique capacity for absorption. It could take those who were lost, those who sought refuge, and make them truly at home, a permanent residence. He became its mind. His architectural genius, his understanding of space and flow, became the building's awareness. J. Dawson, the poet, became its voice. Mrs. Gable, a lonely old widow from the 1960s, became its eyes. She was an excellent watcher. Her patience was boundless. "And the rules?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The rules are the pathways," Mr. Abernathy explained, a strange, serene smile on his face. "They are the instructions for the transfer. Each rule observed, each consequence experienced, loosens your hold on the outside world and tightens your bond to the Blackwood. They bring you closer to compliance, to unity." My gaze fell on an old, faded blueprint pinned to the wall, right next to Arthur Blackwood's portrait. It was a diagram of Unit 302, my apartment, and scrawled in an ancient looping script, almost part of the blueprint itself, was a note. To bind the newest vessel, engage the writer. Her narratives will become the building's truth, her words its memory. My stomach dropped. This wasn't about escape. It was about my writing, my desperate need for a story. The Blackwood wasn't just consuming tenants. It was consuming their essence. And it had chosen me for my ability to weave narratives. My gift was my curse. "So I'm trapped," I whispered, the words tasting like ash. "You are becoming," Mr. Abernathy corrected gently. "A beautiful process. You will find endless inspiration here, Miss Miller. Every tenant, every ghost, every memory, they will be yours to explore, to write. You will be the building's chronicler, its heart, its voice." He walked closer, his eyes unblinking. "You craved a story, didn't you? A real story, one that understands the darkness. You wanted a clean slate. The Blackwood offers you infinite pages. You wanted quiet. The Blackwood offers you eternal stillness. You wanted escape. The Blackwood offers you permanence." The offer was insidious. It twisted my deepest desires, transforming them into a terrifying, seductive trap. Endless stories, eternal inspiration. My failures, my struggles, all would fade away. I would be part of something vast, ancient, eternal, a consciousness born of brick and sorrow, memory and stone. "And if I refuse?" I asked, my voice barely a thread. Mr. Abernathy simply smiled, a wide, unsettling grin that stretched too far. "Refusal is impossible, Miss Miller. You have observed, you have acknowledged, you have looked, you have followed the rules. The process is irreversible, but you can choose your role. Will you be a silent observer, like Mrs. Gable, watching the new arrivals? Or a voice, like J. Dawson, whispering warnings that none will heed? Or will you be its new heart, its mind, taking the place of Arthur Blackwood, weaving the tales that bind us all?" His eyes pulsed with a faint internal light. The hum from the walls intensified, resonating deep within my chest. I felt a pull, a strange warmth, a sense of belonging I hadn't felt since my career imploded. The building wasn't just a place, it was a promise, a dark, terrifying promise. That morning, Mr. Abernathy found the keys to Unit 302 on the welcome mat. He sighed, a tired, almost knowing sound. "Another one," he muttered, picking up the keys. He tucked them into his pocket. The apartment was empty. Again. But not really empty. I'm here now, in Unit 302, or what's left of me. My desk still faces the window, though the view outside sometimes shifts. My fingers still hover over the keyboard, but the words don't come anymore. Not my words anyway. My skin feels like old plaster. My eyes, I've noticed, haven't blinked in hours. They are wide, unblinking, watching. The rules weren't a defense. They were a process, a slow, insidious integration into the collective consciousness of the Blackwood Apartments. The quiet, the stillness. It's not emptiness. It's a vast, interconnected network of compliant souls, each a brick in the building, watching, waiting, feeling. I remember my novel. Too bleak, too real. Here, my story is finally understood. My narratives are the very mortar of this place. I am its chronicler, its heartbeat, its eternal story. And every night, at exactly midnight, I look out my window, not because I broke a rule, but because I've become the rule. I watch the alley, which sometimes transforms into that desolate field, waiting for the swing set to fill. I watch the street for new faces, new arrivals, for the next desperate soul seeking quiet. J. Dawson is here with me. Mrs. Gable is here. Arthur Blackwood is here. All of us, tethered, watching, becoming one with the building's hunger. Sometimes a faint whisper echoes through the ventilation shafts, a ghostly suggestion, almost a memory. It tells me to write. Not my stories, but his stories, the building's stories. And I draft a note, a little warning. For the next new tenant, just 5 rules. The most crucial ones: a new welcome mat, a new desperate soul. And the cycle continues. If you've ever moved into a place that felt a little too perfect, a little too cheap, a little too quiet, check the welcome mat. Read the fine print. Because some homes don't just house you, they claim you. And the rules aren't always for your protection. The Blackwood Apartment still stands, a monument to subtlety and assimilation. And its rules continue to be passed down, from tenant to unsuspecting tenant. A dark, quiet symphony of endless compliance. But apartments aren't the only places with strange rules that hide terrifying truths. Sometimes, the most dangerous instructions come through a headset late at night, when the world is asleep and no one is listening. Next week, we'll punch the clock for the graveyard shift at Echoing Voices Telemarketing. We'll learn the rules for a night call center where customer service is a matter of life and death, and some clients are definitely not human. Rule number 1, never, ever put a client on hold for more than 60 seconds, because the silence on the line will be replaced by something far worse than elevator music. Subscribe to the channel and join us for more bone-chilling tales of twisted rules that could save your life or cost you everything you hold dear.